able to do is, when we navigate from the login page and we successfully log in, we like to navigate to the profile page of Alice or Bob or Charlie, depending on who just logged in. Correct? So the one way to pass that is to pass as part of the URL, perhaps the username, or pass some ID of the person who just logged in as part of the parameter, right? And there's several ways of passing parameters, but one of the more common ways to pass parameters is as part of the URL, right? As part of the URL. So if notice that the user object has, as one of the attributes, the ID of the user that we just found. So we could do that. We could use that as an argument. We can say profile followed by the ID of the user who just logged in. ID. Right? This is the user we found that matched, and that's the ID attribute in that object instance. Yes? Now, if we do that, and we render, right, we say Alice, you'll notice that the URL is correct, right? Profile /123, that's the ID of Alice. But notice that it's not rendering the profile. What happened? Well, the pattern doesn't actually match, right, for the profile. See that? Instead, this has to match /profile followed by something, right? Which happens to be the ID of the user. Correct? Right? So we need to configure what the URL pattern looks like. It's /profile followed by something, right? But it can't be just 123 or 234. We can't hard code it. It could be anything. So we could declare this as a placeholder, right? It says, I don't know what the value, any value, right? And we want to interpret that value. We want to interpret it as the user ID. Right? So we're declaring a placeholder that has a specific name, user ID. I want to refer to that place or whatever. I want to refer to anything that follows profile. I want to refer it by name, a name called user ID. Where do I want to refer to that? I want to refer to it in the profile page, right? The profile page. So the profile page somehow needs to know about that user ID. But HTML, that's not the responsibility of HTML. HTML can handle data, right? HTML's responsibility is just to look pretty, right? Only a controller could, interact with data, right? So the profile page should have its own controller. So here's a profile page which will have its profile controller, right? And which we don't have. Right? So let's declare quickly a controller for the profile page. Right? So here we have a profile controller, right? Declared down here. The profile controller with its own scope, okay? With its own. What we want to be able to do here is retrieve that user ID, right? That is coming as a parameter, right? In a route, right? That route has a parameter in it, yes? And we want to retrieve it from it, right? So the routing library, ngroute, has declared one of these magical objects, right, that deal with route parameters. And it's called route params. Right? That's the name of the object. We can ask for it, and one of the things we can ask for is that this is a map of all the parameters that are in the route. Okay? Using the names that we gave it. What names did we give it? We call it user ID. So hopefully, in that map, in that collection of parameters that are being parsed from the path, we will find the user ID, using that name. You can use square bracket notation or the dot notation, whatever you prefer. Right? It's a map. Right? It's an object, and we can retrieve it and grab it here, and we can say alert the user ID just to make sure we got it. right? So if we refresh, there it is, the 1, 2, 3. So we were able to grab it, and there's our profile. Okay. So there's our profile. We know the ID. We know the ID. But what we need to do is render the data for that particular user, right? The first name, the last name for Alice. Where is that data? Well, right now that data is over here, right? It's a logging controller, right? So what we could do is make it, put it as a global variable, right? Which you shouldn't do, but for now, for academic purposes, I'm going to leave it right there. I could use that ID to match against the ID of the array, right? We could iterate over the array for var u in users, yes, and find that user by ID, right? If users sub u dot ID matches the user ID. If it matches, I found the user. I found the user for that ID. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that user for rendering. I'm going to send it for rendering to the scope. I'm going to say, hey, scope, here's our user. It's users sub u. Right? I've declared that object on the scope. That means that the HTML is going to see it. Right? So that on the profile, on the input fields, where are they? In the input fields, on the input fields, now ngModel can refer to variables, right, on the scope. And now there's a variable on the scope called user, that has what attributes? Username, password, first name, last name. Yes? Right, so this could say ngModel user.firstName. This could be ngModel user last name, ngModel username. There it is. Alice, Wonder, and Alice, right? This is data that was retrieved from that array. We found it by just iterating over that array. Okay, and we found it. We bound it to data on the scope, right, on a variable called user, and now it's available for the template for rendering. That makes sense? Okay. We'll have plenty of chance to do this over and over. We'll do this again for the website. We'll do it again for the pages, right? So we'll get a chance to practice this, right, so that you can then go on and practice on your own for your assignment. Yes? Yeah, we're gonna change this. Yeah, we're gonna do that. All that. Yes, one step at a time. Okay. All right. All right. Let's leave it here.